This week's first cup is going to ask where the concept where technical fluency becomes real leverage for product managers, a different lens on the old "how technical should I be" question, and where does it start drifting into dangerous confidence? Because I got it working and I understand the consequences aren't necessarily the same thing. So if we don't get Dunning-Kruger effect on your bingo card today, then we're not really doing our job. So let's get started and introduce our first cup panelists. And first, my co-host for today, from marine mammals to product strategy and a karaoke stage or two, that is a career arc to envy. Please welcome April Dawn. Hey, April.
Hello. Good morning.
And he survived startups, Adobe, and Auburn economics. So yes, he has seen risk. It's Kent Keirsey. Hey, Kent, welcome back. And most people feel the room and shake and they panic. Nandu calls it data. Nandu Shah, president of the Atlanta CTO Club. Welcome. Welcome. All right. So I'm just going to toss this at each of you to get it started. And if you're in our audience here today, welcome. We want you to participate in this conversation as well. So encourage you to turn on your camera. And if you would like, we would love to introduce you or let you introduce yourself to our Product Coffee audience and weigh in on the question we're asking today or anything else that has your attention. But we're going to start off. I'm going to start off with you, April. And as AI gives product managers more ability to build, where does the line between useful fluency and dangerous overreach live? And more importantly, who gets to define it?
That's a really great question. I think that, I don't know, just I continue to feel like product management has an identity crisis. We're right kind of in the middle of it right now. And we've talked about how product management is moving more towards being more of a business leader focus, right? How AI is compressing the cycles of, prototyping and making things quicker, and it frees up time for product managers to be more business focused. Right. And here we're talking about, now they're getting into coding, right? So it seems like this expansion is sort of like expanding and contracting the product management role. And I don't know, the thought of, like driving a car that was vibe coded, is a little scary to me. So I think that my first thought is, how technical are these product managers? Who's checking the code? Who's making sure that, it's all well and good, especially with AI and guardrails and risks. It just seems very risky to me. But I think it does allow for those who are super technical to really flex their technical skills, those technical product managers. But I wonder, are we then dividing again product management into different technical side product managers and more business side product managers? And we've been hearing about this whole full stack product manager. So to me, it kind of blurs the lines, and I think it's into a little bit of scary territory.
Okay.
In my opinion.
All right. Kent, how about you?
Go ahead. Do you have a follow-on?
No, I don't have a follow-on. It is literally the same question. I can give you a follow-on if you like.
No, I can answer this one. You said to kind of come with my spicy take, so I'll come with it. I think most product managers lean far more towards this side of conservatism than leaning into the technology, and I think that's probably a mistake. My general sense is that teams that are doing AI right actually do have the product manager like in the fray with them. I think there's a lot that can be done with respect to the context environment of an agent harness to kind of put in guardrails around what a PM can actually mess up. I think being more technical is never a bad thing. And I would say with AI right now, there's really no reason not to understand or know the basics. I think at this point, there's really no excuse to just opening up and asking it a question and digging in and figuring out how it all works. If you don't understand the systems that you're working on, the languages that your team is working on, you don't have to necessarily go in and understand the exact language syntax to be capable of having an effective conversation with AI about the trade-offs of using this language over that language, why this system is being built the way it is. And I think you have a much more productive conversation with your teams if you can be in the fray with them, pointing the way and saying, that's what we need to go build, or here's where I am and thinking through this problem. I think that's my general sense, is that most product folks who aren't already in the fray are afraid of what it means, to their career and what they have to do to be, a competent product manager. But I think that's the reality of where we're at. Being a product manager tomorrow is going to be a lot different than it was yesterday or 5 years ago.
Yeah, when the brand manager was kind of put out there by I think it was Procter and Gamble that kind of created the product management concept with their brand managers. People were doing things with typewriters and handwritten memos, and then Microsoft Office came along, and that became a core skill set. You got to use, a word processor is, I don't know if I want to use a computer. Well, okay, now it's table stakes. And so, but the evolution into AI-enabled product management or AI-enabled business really has happened a lot faster than all those things. So one of the things that you kind of teased there a little bit and didn't say directly is it sounds like there's some folks that are kind of sticking their heads in the sand still, hoping it'll all go away. Yeah. That number needs to dwindle quickly. Nandu, good morning. Welcome back. What was your take on this concept of where technical fluency is right, and then where does it become dangerous?
So once again, I'm not going to answer the question you asked me.
I wouldn't expect you to.
I'm going to answer the question that I want, which is, take a look at this. Can you see this?
Yes.
I got one of these for my birthday. Spring toy, right? Inside it, there's like these two little gears. Oh, it's my camera. Okay. These two little gears in there that spin. There's a motor with a little button, right? I'd code me one of these, right? This started with someone, like, I don't think there was a product manager necessarily involved in the invention of this thing. I think it was a couple of people tooling around, made a cool toy. But like getting from the idea to this, there are steps way beyond making a prototype, way beyond designing. And I don't think any of that has changed in decades. 20-ish years ago, before the term DevOps existed, before the term SRE existed, I was at a company. I was sitting with an ops friend of mine, a system administrator, and a developer, an educated Java programmer, walked up to this guy's desk and said, the server that my app is running on is slow. Why is that? And so the ops guy looked at it and said, we haven't run any maintenance. No one in this team has touched that server in over a month. So whatever is not working the way you want is due to some change that you made. And this was someone who knew the ins and outs of his code and of the languages and tools and frameworks he was using, but was still unaware of downstream consequences. I don't think any of that has changed. What has changed is upstream parts of the process have better fidelity now, and we should. If we don't lose sight that the overall end-to-end product development and delivery process hasn't changed, I don't know that it's possible to have dangerous overreach, because somewhere along the way, someone is saying this thing is or isn't good enough to move on to the next stage of development.
So there is a check and balances system in place that protects against the danger in most organizations, and that's sufficient to enable the upside, is what you say.
Yeah, and that function is probably scaled with the specifics of the organization and what they're shipping, right? If you have, if you're working at NASA, that stuff is very tightly governed in ways that it's not at a 3-person startup.
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be at a 3-person startup. I think enabling technologies are, broadly speaking, they're good, right? Digital cameras, we all have like phenomenally good digital cameras in our pockets now, but there's still, if you want to be a magazine photographer, just having a good camera and being able to take good pictures isn't enough. There's still a process that has been understood for a long time, and fitting new tools into that process is just part of how the world develops.
Nandu clearly doesn't have production access.
I have more than I would like.
All right. So we're going to turn around and thanks to our first cup of panelists who help us kick things off, and they'll stick around and continue to be a part of this conversation. But I see, Jerry, you've got your hand up and would love some of the folks that are here in Zoom with us to join in the fray. Also, if you're out on YouTube, you can join us on Zoom as well, just by signing up at productcoffee.com. Get on our mailing list, and we will send you the registration to join us in the Zoom call each week as well. We'd love to have you be a part of the conversation in kind of a more integrated way. So, Jerry, go for it. What's on your mind this morning? Introduce yourself to everybody first, and then tell us what has your attention.
Good morning. Jerry Odenwelder. I do consulting in the product management space. And Jason, you should know, as soon as you put AI and product management together, I would have a take. So just a brief background. I came to product management from a technical background. I was a coder for years before I became a product manager, and probably just recently crossed the threshold where now 50% of my career was product management. Until recently, 50% had been development. So I get it. I get the allure of machine generated code. But the thing that always comes back to me when this topic comes up is my very first product management experience, where I was bringing the developer solutions, and we would have very long discussions. I'll use the word discussions. I won't say arguments, but we would have very long discussions about the solution that I brought. And they would get tense, and I would leave frustrated because in my mind, right, the team just didn't get it. I had the solution. They just needed to build it. And through that experience, after one of those meetings, one of our lead architects came up to me and he said, "Hey, Jerry," he goes, "you come with great ideas, but let's try something different. What if you brought us a problem to solve and not the solution?" And so I turned. The next time we had to have a meeting on something, I pivoted from bringing the solution to bringing problems. And the conversation changed. It became magical. And the solution that was generated was better than what I had in my head that I wanted when we entered the room. So and Jason, you and I have talked about this. I have a real concern when you're bringing the solution to the team, you're actually limiting their creativity. You're limiting their ability to think about a problem and solve a problem. So and bringing a solution could mean, coming in like I did, back in the day with drawings on a piece of paper, or it could be something that the machine generated for you. Vibe coding is the current term, but it's machine generated code. So that's my thing on this. If we spend time, and time is a resource, right? And it's a limited resource. If I'm spending time vibe coding a solution that I'm going to take to the team to show them what I think we should be doing, and since Steve Johnson's not here, I'm gonna get on the customer interviewing bandwagon here. If I'm spending time vibe coding a solution to take to the team, I'm not spending time talking to customers. I'm not spending time understanding the problems. I'm not spending time understanding the business and what the business needs to achieve, because I've poured all my time into vibe coding a solution. So it's a balance. And I think April's comment early on about dividing again, there is a division. And I think that division is like, you're either going to spend time producing a solution, or you're going to spend time understanding the problems and engaging the team on a problem, and your chances of getting a better solution go up.
Yep.
And I think I'm right at my time limit. I think I told you we wouldn't talk for more than 2 minutes.
We have not integrated the air horn yet, but it's coming. It did fine. So for those who are just joining us, the question that we're talking about here on the first cup is we framed it up a little bit, but as AI is giving product managers more ability to build, where is the line between useful technical fluency and dangerous overreach, and who gets to define it? And you can take that for whatever you mean. And the other thing that we do here, for the next few minutes is we're just giving you an opportunity to introduce yourself and give a take on that, or drop another product management related question, whatever has your attention right now. that you'd like to talk about or hear about or get people's feedback on, we'd love to hear from you. But more than anything, we want to meet you. So turn your camera on, raise your hand, and jump in here and introduce yourself. And Allison, you've had your hand up for a minute, so let me let you jump in. Allison Herbert.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. So I'm just listening to this conversation in April. I'm sorry I didn't catch the top part of your response to this, but I think what you and Jerry and we've been chatting about in the thread here struck a chord with me because I think we can be technical. Depending on where we've worked, our experiences, Jerry's own experience definitely informs how he shows up for his product work. I'm going to use an outside of product work example because I bet you there's just a few of us doing these things. How many of us are weekend warriors at our house? I've done manual labor outside of sitting in front of a computer, probably, yes. Okay, I have some on my list. What point do you say this is someone else's job and I will kindly pay them for it? And it's either because you don't know how to do the thing, or if you do the thing, it's going to cost you more to have somebody come and fix it. And we all know what that is. Some of it's other things, but I'm not going to get into those lists. But I think that's the line that we're talking about here in the product management space. Yes, we understand what coding does. We understand, do not do this in production. There are things that we do not do. I don't think you want me coding and pushing things to production unless there are certain practices in place that says we have reviewed this, it follows our practices, we've checked this, we've tested it, things of that nature. So I'm not saying that, we don't test things that product managers build, but I think, that's those same practices that we bestow upon our developers to build good things has to be for everyone that's building, whoever the person is on the team. And so how do we create a system around to do it together rather than saying you sit over there and go find the problem, or you sit over there and test the problem? So I keep hearing division and separate. And that part doesn't feel right. I think it is similar to what Kent said, putting us in the room together and then talking through who writes it, who tests it, who builds it, that type of situation.
Yeah,
So that's it.
I'm intrigued by the concept that LinkedIn deployed at the beginning of this year, I think it was, where they changed their associate product manager program to an associate full stack builder program is what they called it. And full stack builder is kind of this, they look for people that that have strengths in multiple areas. So somebody's got some design skills and some product skills, or some design skills and some engineering skills. And they put a team together of 3 or 4 people that have a lot of overlap and complementary skills, so that it's less about a specific role definition and more about putting a cross-functional team together that can work and move in and out of different roles and be a little bit more flexible in how they describe what they do in order to deliver the value they're charged with delivering. And then there's lots of different angles for looking at this. And I think, to your point, there's just an evolution in thinking is absolutely required. And I think a lot of folks have resisted it for a little while. And said, it's really no different. And in some ways, conceptually, it isn't. But in other ways, there is a fundamental change to how we get things done. Nandu, you've had your hand up, and I don't want to, and I definitely want to spin back around to you. So come on.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what Jerry said. I agreed with him right up until he said product manager who's vibe coding isn't spending their time in the right place. Again, there are things that have not changed in a very long time. In 1984, some bright people published a book called The Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs. It's a classic of computer science. And in 1984, they wrote, I'm probably going to get this not 100% accurate, but this is close enough. Programs should be written primarily for humans to read and only incidentally for a computer to execute. And what they were getting at is all of these artifacts we build, whether it's a prototype or a wireframe or a PowerPoint deck or even code, pull requests, tickets, these are proxies for communication between 2 humans who are trying to collaborate towards something else. How you produce that artifact, I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters if you're writing the code by hand or using AI to do it. It's still just a proxy for an actual human conversation.
Interesting. I haven't read any of the computer science classics. Maybe I should do that.
That's a good point, Nandu. Yeah, if I came across as product managers weren't doing the right thing, that was that was a mistake on my part, and I apologize for that. I don't think it's that they're not doing the right thing. I think it's that, again, time is a resource. If I invest it in one place, I can't invest that same amount of time somewhere else.
For sure.
And
And I guess what I'm trying to say is we should not think about vibe coding as I want to ship a feature so much as I have this way to tell someone else what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And I get that. And I think Manesh is getting on that too with his question in the chat about, do you get better feedback from the user using your vibe coded app or sitting and asking questions that may or may not yield the right solution, which again, put this in the chat. I think as soon as you put a solution in front of somebody, you've biased their thinking. And the conversation then turns to the solution. And the problem we're trying to solve as in product companies is not, should the button be on the left or the right, or is the color of the right? The problem is whatever the customer's problem is that the solution was supposed to solve. And so I find that if you put a solution in front of somebody to talk about the problem, the problem tends to become the solution. Well, I don't like where you put the button, or I don't like the tab order, or like something, but it's not the problem. So, but I think
another reframe on that. I think so. And another reframe on that, by the way, that becomes a fun game. I forget, Cunningham's law or something. The fastest way to get the right answer on the internet is to post the wrong answer.
Yes.
So go just build a thing that sucks so people can tell you everything that's wrong with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of giving people something to react to, especially in a moment of indecision, right? Carla, good morning. Why don't you please introduce yourself to everybody here, and what's on your mind?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I have a question, or I have something to contribute following up on what Jerry said, and also to quote Steve, who's not here. You know how Steve says that we shouldn't focus on solution, we should focus on problem when speaking with developers. Is my audio bad? Because I'm using my computer.
I can hear you fine.
Okay. So one of the things Steve says is that when you speak with developers, you should focus on the problem and the context and not the solution. But he does give a caveat. He says that is assuming that you're speaking with a developer, not a coder. And I don't know who in this room have worked with strong developers who you can have a very fruitful discussion with to come up with a fruitful solution. Or if you have worked with very junior developers or contractors or remote developers where they're just like, just tell us what to do. We just want you to tell us what to do. And then what do you do? Because again, like we've said, ad nauseum, that we should be focusing on the problem and the developers should focus on the solution. But if you're working with people who are not familiar with the business, who are not familiar with the product, they're contractors, they're junior, they want you to hold their hands more. How do you navigate that is what I'm trying to get to.
So if the best practice is to bring problems and then let your development team iterate and build and think about the solution, but your team isn't embracing that side of the role and is saying, no, just tell me what you want me to do. How do you manage that? How do you strengthen it? And I want to turn the camera specifically. I want to point at you, Kent, because I know you think a lot about great team dynamics in what you're doing. And we've got another guest on here that I might point to as well. So, and anyone, I'd love you to jump in and give your take and thought on that. But I especially want to put Kent on the spot and get your take on Carla's question.
I think Carla calls out something that I try to emphasize to my product teams often is the role of product management is largely context. It's setting context with teams and helping them situate themselves in the world of our customer, the world of our business, understanding all the parts and pieces of the system so that they can make the right decisions as we build the solution. But I think that, to your point, Carla, implies that you have engaged people participating in the process of building a product with you. If you are simply outsourcing specific tasks to other people, you're the one that is the locus of all judgment and control at that point anyways, right? You're not probably looking for a whole lot of insight or innovation coming from those folks who are just saying, hey, this wasn't in the JIRA ticket that you sent me, right? And I think anyone who's probably done product management for any amount of time has run into this situation where you've got somebody who clearly could have looked at the ticket, at the goal of the ticket, and said, yes, it probably should have worked this way, even if it wasn't explicitly called out in the requirement. But because it wasn't there, they just decided not to do it. And it went through the process and got checks across the board because everything else was met. I think the process of building a team and pulling the right people together is one, getting folks who have the potential to be engaged. And secondly, and I think Marty Kagan talks about this quite often, is you have to get the team engaged. You have to build the empathy for the customer. You have to find a way to inspire them to care a little bit about the customer and building that solution, and then give them the context to succeed. And if you do that, I think you're working on a product with a team. Otherwise, you might as well be using Claude Code just to build whatever you want. And the difference is kind of arbitrary at that point.
That's a great take. Anybody else have a take on that? I see, April, you've got your hand up. Jump in.
Yeah. My hand's up because I had an interesting comment from Josh MacNamee about having meaningful conversations with engineering. And I think that follows nicely on what Kent was saying earlier about technical fluency for product managers. Wanted to know if Josh wanted to share his perspective. Come off camera.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so I think so much is, and I think Kent probably will agree kind of based on what you said, is so much of this evolves around the culture, right, of the product teams and how things work. And we've all had our experiences with certain personas, right, certain folks, certain engineers, certain types. And so, yeah, totally get it. I think one of the things that's unlocked the most meaningful conversations for me is this speaks to a lot of the culture as an aside, is whether it's planning, whether it's a specific solution that we've landed on, whether it's taking something that exists, scaling it, whatever the scenario is. One thing that has helped me the most is being able, I'll take my Claude Code instance, right, and I have it hooked up to wherever the technical documentation is. And so it also depends on culture and how that's operated. Our last role, we had a pretty solid knowledge base of technical docs in our Notion instance. And I also would point that, and I point at our code repos, all of our pull requests. And so I could literally, Claude would have, the code base, some of the technical docs. And if we need to have a conversation in advance, not long, maybe 10, 15 minutes, I would just have it. If I didn't understand what we were talking about deeply, I would just have it say, hey, look, I have no clue, but this is what we're talking about here is from a technical. What's this particular piece doing? What are the trade-offs? Help me understand. Like, I learn best with analogies. So it would give me some really cool analogies to help me understand what this thing was building, what we're doing. And so then, during the meeting, I would just quickly ask it questions if I needed to in conversation. And it just helped me ask better questions. And it also, if they would ask more of a technical question, I would be able to then quickly tie that to how I was thinking about the business side, customer side of things. It just unlocks so many more things for me. Yes, could I have also said, great, go ahead and code that? Sure. But they know better than to give me access to production. So
that's great. That's a great way to land the plane on this part of the discussion this morning. So thanks everybody who jumped in. One of the things that we see a lot and hear a lot is the old trope that product managers are the CEO of the product. But what happens when you actually step into founder or entrepreneurship mode? We're going to talk about the gap between the product leadership and company building and what changes when product managers move into startups or venture or entrepreneurship. And then sometimes when they return back to enterprise or product management role, does it bring a completely different lens? So we're going to get into that with our panel today. And first I want to introduce in the studio with me today is I've got Hari Gopal, and he brings a venture-informed lens into product strategy and startup growth from deep inside the Atlanta Innovation System. Hari was previously at Cox Communications. He is now Director of Corporate Insights at Engage, which is a VC firm here based in Atlanta. Welcome, Hari.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. And next, we already met him this morning once, but he's gone from product leadership to startup founder to acquisition and back into enterprise product leadership at Adobe. So he is basically making AI more fun and more expensive at the same time. Give it up for Keirsey. He's Director of Product Management at Adobe. And last but certainly not least, he has seen product leadership inside venture-backed startups, public companies, privately held organizations, his own startup journey. Please welcome my friend Steve Ingdahl, Head of Product at Systech. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you for inviting me, James.
You bet. Glad to have you all here. So let's get into it. And I'd like you to feel free to expand a little bit on your background and your perspective. But let's start with that mindset of the product manager as the CEO of the product and how that translates as you start thinking into a larger world outside of maybe a corporate environment. Hari, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, and one, thanks for having me, and great conversation this morning on First Cup. But I think a couple things come to mind as a function of that. One is, I think it's more true than ever, probably the product manager as CEO, right? I think we had a little bit of this discussion this morning, which is this idea that I think when I, from a venture standpoint, look out at the market and I say, what makes a really great founding team or founder, right? I really look at three things, which is one, a great understanding of the vision of a product. Where is something going to go, right? And that's kind of really classic kind of product manager work. I think secondly is real technical expertise. Can this team go and execute on that? And right, you can see in the traditional product management space, like there's a little bit of friction on, is that you? Is that someone else? Is that a developer? Is that an engineer? How do you think through that first? And the third is this really classic thing that kind of came up, which is this kind of, do I understand the customer? Can I go to market with it? And I think if you have that person can be one person, that person can be three people. But really when I look at this from a venture lens and the side I stand on is I get a great opportunity in my job to, one, come from a great product background where I got to work at Cox. I got to work on a ton of different products. And then now I work with enterprises to help them find things. So essentially enterprises invest in us and we invest in startups. When I go and talk to our enterprises, I get to talk to great product managers there who are also trying to solve problems. And I think what you're seeing is the same kind of friction is occurring everywhere. And I think the question becomes, does everyone kind of become this multi-tool player? Or do we start to see really interesting things that start to happen from founders who are themselves product managers who can go and do really exciting things? I'll end this little piece with a little story. I just met a founder recently who is from the lab space. And I didn't know much about labs, but she was saying to me that when you're in a lab, you'll pick out certain things in the lab, and they're usually great indicators on if the lab is operating well. So it's cleanliness and a few other items. One of the things she thought was really interesting is that she went to a convenience store recently and like the bathrooms were really bad. And so she said, hey, what if I built a product using my lab expertise to go and build in this convenience store and use the same kind of indicators around cleanliness and some of these other things to see if the convenience store is running well, and would that help you? So it's a really great application of this idea of like a great product person who said, I saw this thing, I can parallel it, and I now have some of the technical expertise to go get it done. That I think is kind of a really interesting way to kind of look at the product manager role as it evolves over time.
Yeah, I guess in her case, she's able to really articulate and understand a problem that they experience in her current environment, and then look out in the market and say, hey, this problem actually exists in other places in different kind of ways. And so that gives you a different lens to look at it.
And then I think 5 years ago, she would have had to go and get a technical co-founder to go in and go. But now she can run the whole shop on her own. She can run the whole business. She can agentically deliver things that she wants to. And that's a really exciting prospect to say, hey, all of a sudden these kind of new people have great expertise can now kind of jump into being product managers themselves.
And we'll probably come back around to it. I'm really curious at what point it starts to break down because a lot of the inspiration for today's talk is I talk to a lot of people in our community who are in product management roles, and we're going to come around to this topic again in a moment as well, but they're not loving the corporate environment. It's less fun than it used to be, or they're thinking, I see all these opportunities and my company doesn't have the time or the resources to invest in them. I'd really like to go solve this problem that's a little bit different. Maybe I can solve it on my own, or maybe I'm playing with Claude Code and I wonder, can I make something that's valuable myself? And so they start to think in that maybe it's a side hustle, or maybe I'm going to start something new. And how far can I go and when does it start to break down? So, but before we get there, I want to spin back around to that first question and jump over to you, Kent. And because you have walked both sides,